Hey ladies, thanks so much for joining me here today. So today I have a topic that is near and dear to most of our hearts, and that is on marriage. And it's kind of a touchy topic today on marriage because I want to talk with those of my sisters, my sisters in faith who are maybe struggling in their marriage and are frustrated in their marriage, maybe even unhappy in your marriage. And I just wanted to share with you a couple pieces of encouragement and advice, if you happen to be in that place. And we all know, every relationship has its ups and downs. So we all know that some days are going to be great and some aren't. And sometimes you have to go through the valleys so that you know what the mountaintop is going to feel like. So sometimes we go through seasons like that. And I just want to encourage you that, first of all, hopefully this is just a passing through season, and it could be that you just, God's trying to teach you guys something together. But for those of you who maybe it's not just a season, I want to encourage you, first of all, to just pray. And I know that sounds really cliche. I know it's well, I've been praying for 10 years, thanks for the great advice. I didn't know to pray. That's maybe what some of you are thinking, but I just want to encourage you to keep it up. I want to truly speak to you and encourage you to keep praying, because God really, truly can work. And God works through a wife. God works through us. That's one thing that the Bible says, is that we do have influence over our husbands, not through our words, but through a gentle and quiet spirit. And I don't think that means we have to be a really shy, quiet kind of person. If you are, that's fine. But if you're like me, I'm not shy and I'm not quiet. And I'm not the most gentle person all the time. I mean, that's not what it means. I believe what it means is that we want to be the kind of woman who isn't stirring things up, who isn't being manipulative, who isn't obviously nagging, but the kind of woman who, instead of always having to say something, instead can learn, I'm still learning, can learn to be quiet and to pray and to go to God with our worries and to go to God with our prayers and to believe that God really can change our husbands, because we all know that our husbands have things to change, and guess what? So do we. And I find that sometimes as women, we can just get so annoyed and just talk about our husbands without looking at our own selves and looking at, what are some things that I'm doing that I could change, my attitude and the motives behind my heart and so on. But I just want to encourage you, if you have been praying, to just keep praying, and maybe, like I said, talk less and pray more. And that has an influence over your husband. You have influence over your husband, but the constant talking at him that works with our girlfriends does not work with our husbands, with men. And another thing that I'll often pray is that God will, sometimes I'm I don't know how you're going to do this, God. I don't even see it. I wish I could manipulate the situation, but will you have another man that he respects speak into his life? Somehow, I don't know how the conversation's going to come up, that they'd even talk about our marriage or whatever, but God, will you just help me? Just bring another guy that he respects and will listen to and has influence and can talk straight to him when I can't. And God answers that prayer. God hands down answers that prayer, not always in the exact timing that I want, but God really does answer that prayer. So I think it's so important that, of course, if you're single and watching this, that you marry a man that has Christian friends around, close men around him who are his friends and who are Christians, because you will count on them to speak truth later on down the road. Okay, so my first one is my first piece of advice is just to really pray. And I also wanted to add, to encourage you, especially if you're newly married or young in your marriage. My husband and I got married when we were 27. We are not the same people at 34. 7 years later, my husband is like a changed creation of God. When I married my husband and when I was dating my husband, what I was not looking for is how charming is he? Does he buy me nice things? Does he, is he suave? Like, does he make me feel like, whatever. I mean, obviously I thought about some of that stuff, but like what I was looking for was his heart and his character. Does he have a heart for God? Does he go after God? Does he humble himself when he's convicted? Does he get convicted about sin? Does he, I looked for heart issues in him, because that is what's going to take us down the long haul, is his character, and that I can trust him, and that he is so faithful, and that God is so faithful, because he's following God and he's seeking God with or without me. He's seeking God. And so let me just tell you that in these 7 years that my husband and I have been married, my husband has been seeking God. Sometimes some years more than others. Same with me. And so over the past 7 years, especially in this past year, he's absolutely blossomed into and continuing to blossom. And so I tell you that to give you encouragement, because just because your husband may not be, this Christian leader and whatever that exactly looks like, if he's not this like, oh, I can't believe you're a Christian and you're not treating me this way, I've been there. And my husband, 7 years later, is a different man of God. And he has kept the faith and kept the walk. And God slowly but surely has changed him. And so I just want to tell you that, or if you're single, your guy does not have to be, I've heard girls say like, well, look at like John Piper or some like famous pastor who's, 70 years old or 60 years old. And it's like, I bet that man when he was 25 was not like that. God uses time to change people and to change ourselves too. And we need to always continue to look at ourselves and what God's trying to change in us. So, okay. So my point is just keep praying, because he's going to change, and just be patient with him to change. And then secondly, I just want to encourage you as women to be very cautious about who you're talking to about your marriage, and how often you're talking to people about your marriage, and that you want to guard your marriage. You want to put boundaries around your marriage. And sometimes you have to put boundaries around your thoughts, because you're constantly thinking, and I've done this before, constantly thinking about possibly just straight up a lie that's in your head, and it's taking you, like, that thought is distancing you from your husband, and then you voice it to your best friend, your group of friends, or your mom, and they can feed into that. And if somebody would feed into that, like they're taking you, their words are taking you and distancing, like putting like a wall up between you and your husband, that is somebody you cannot talk to. That is somebody that you need to recognize. They're creating more of a wall. They're making more, they're feeding into my lies and making me continue to separate emotionally from my husband. And I cannot talk to that person about this. I cannot feed into this. I need to talk to somebody who speaks truth into my life and brings me closer and helps me with this, not makes it worse. And so we need to just be like, keep that boundary and just be so, just like fight for our husbands, fight for our relationships. None of us can just win the marriage lottery. Like, anybody who has a great marriage has fought for it, and they have put boundaries, and they've worked hard on their marriage. They've gone through hard times in their marriage. And nobody just like, oh, aren't they lucky? They just like happen to hit the lottery with their marriage. Like, that's not how it works. And anybody who's had a great long marriage will tell you that. And so really fight for that relationship. And then also when it comes to your friends and your mom, God says in the Bible that when you become married, when two become one, that you are to leave your parents and cleave to your husband. And part of that means that, when you hear some good news, or you hear or something goes wrong with your kids, or whatever it may be, who's the first person that you want to talk to? Who's the first person that you go to? Is it your mom? Or are you like, I've got to call my husband. Like, I've got to text my husband. I've got to talk to him about this. I've got to share with him this news, or something goes wrong and you don't know what to do. Who do you call first? I remember when my husband and I were like getting close to being engaged, and I forget what happened, if it was with my house or my car or something broke. And I always called my dad. And I remember for the first time, my first thought was, I've got to call Paul. I've got to call Paul. And he's the first person that I called. And I was like, oh my goodness, like my dad didn't come into my mind. And so it just was like, as I started to, want to leave my parents and be with my husband, and really share everything first with him, because he was becoming my very best friend. And you build so much trust that way when you share things with each other and you go through things together, big or little. And so I also encourage you just to form that friendship with your husband and share things with him first, instead of, your friend or your mom or your dad. So that just hopefully a little bit of encouragement for you to just stick through, stick with it, stick through that prayer. And I do understand those seasons and those times where you don't see the other side. And I heard an older woman in my Bible study a couple weeks ago. She was praying with myself and another woman, and it was so neat because she's a woman who has not only grandchildren but great grandchildren, and just one of these precious women of our church that when she speaks, I want to hear what she has to say, because she's so strong in her faith for so many years. So she was praying for us, and she said, God, we know that you allow us to go through the valleys, because without the valleys, we wouldn't understand the mountaintops, and we wouldn't appreciate the mountaintops. And so I pray that you would just help us as we do go through those valleys. And it just, that wisdom just hit me so much. So maybe if you're going through that valley, just know that valley is going to make you just appreciate that mountaintop that you will have as your husband, and you both continue to change and grow. I hope that gives you a little bit of encouragement for today. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. You can comment here on YouTube, and have a great day. Bye.